Howdy YouTube. I get a lot of comments about my walking sticks, and as much as I would like to make one for everybody, that's not possible. So I thought I'd do a couple of videos on how I find and cut shape my walking sticks. So the first thing you need to do is, I use nothing but hickories because they're a strong stick, and I like to leave the bark on them to kind of a little accent. But first thing you gotta do is identify them. A hickory here in Missouri, they don't grow uniform like a maple tree or something like that. The branches just kind of stick out every which way. Sometimes they grow down before they grow up, and another thing about a hickory is you can bend it. I could tie that in a knot, and that branch wouldn't break. Whereas a maple or something like that, it's always gonna break. Alright, so there's three things I consider when I'm hunting a walking stick, and that's size, shape, and the root ball on it. And the root ball is where I get my handles from. So I found one here, decent. I'll come up over the top of them, and I'll look down them, all the way around. Kind of like eyeing a straight piece of lumber. Because you don't want a crooked stick, and I mean, a straight hickory is 1 in a million, but the straighter the better. And sometimes if there's crooks in the middle of it, as long as it starts out straight where my handle's going to be and ends up straight, there can be as many curves in between as you want. So this tree, it's a little bit thicker than what I like. The thicker they are, the heavier the walking stick's going to be. And this one's about at the edge of the limit as far as size. And I've already dug this one out most of the way because it takes a half hour to dig this out, especially out of this rocky soil. And that's another thing. The rockier the soil, the better root balls you're going to get on it. Because the rock, they don't have an easy time growing in the rock, and they tend to get big bulbous, right under the ground level. Be a nice bulbous part that you can carve your handles out of. So when I look at this tree, I think of where my handle is going to be. My handle is going to be right here, this part, and I'll leave some rings or something in the bark. So I dug this hole out, and I know my handle is going to be here, but I want to cut it way down here because as it dries, these ends are going to split. So you want all the splitting to happen in this part and not get up into where your handle is going to be. And if you cut it off right here, your wood's going to split into the handle. It usually doesn't split a lot, but sometimes it does. And I'll also cut it way too long so the other end can split also. And then when the splitting's done, I'll cut it off. That's usually within a couple, 3 or 4 days of cutting it, it'll stop splitting. So, can I get your help here, please? So I left these little roots on here for a reason. And the reason is that if you bust these off, it will pull knots out of my handle. And I don't want that because, it could be part of a finger grip or something. There'd be a huge block of wood missing. So you got to be real careful. You got to dig around those. And then what I'll do is I'll cut it back here, and then I'll cut it up here. And that's just to get that whole part out of the way. Cut it back there. There. Alright. Then I want to get down here about as low as I can get. And it's important that while you're cutting it, not to be pushing over on the stick, because it will split your grains along here. And if if you've got a stick that you got to use as much as possible for your grip down here, and that wood splits up into it, it's going to make for a not as good looking grip as what you could have. So all right. So here's what I got left. Pretty good ball right here. Pretty good stick. This should make a nice looking stick. All right, get the missus here to help me one more time, and I'll show you how I cut it to length. So usually a grip stick is going to come about to your belly button or so. You don't want to make them too tall. So I want to allow a lot of excess on the bottom for splitting, and I also want to allow a lot of excess up here for splitting. And this is just for the next few days before I'll cut it off. So put it up here. That'd be way too tall of a stick, so that's perfect. I'm gonna cut it right here. All right. Be a good looking stick. Could be, you never know. All right, part 2 will be roughing it out, and I could probably rough it out as soon as I get home, or wait till tomorrow, possibly even the next day. But if you wait too long, this bark turns to concrete, and it's so hard to carve once it gets hard. And another thing that's important is I only cut these in the winter time, and that's because in the summer and in the spring, when the sap's running, this bark won't stay on here. You'll carve it and it'll shrink up and pop loose. And that's not what I want, so I only cut them in the winter time. All right, that's it.